Hello, Eleonora. Are you there? Hello, Olivia. If you guys can hear my voice,
Hello, yes, we can hear you.
Hello, dear.
hi.
Hello, girls. I can hear you. Sorry, I can't put on my camera. Okay, so I just tried reaching out to Bethany again.
A ver, vamos a
Guys, we are waiting for a few more participants to join, and after that, we will start. So, until then, you guys can chat in the comments and just interact with each other.
Hello, everyone. Good evening from here. I am Olivia Oputa. It's nice to be here. With me, I have my fellow leads, Dia, Vijay, and Eleonora. Eleonora will be handling this session. She'll be moderating the section today, and we'll be having the section taken by our very own Bethany. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Olivia, for introducing us. Everyone, hello. My name is Dia Vijay, and I'm also one of the leads. Today's session. Eleanor, if you are here, you can just unmute yourself and start the session.
Hello, everyone. My name is Matalanga Eleanora, and I'm glad to have you with us today. So today we are going to have our session Generative AI with Azure AI Studio, and we are going to be taken through by Bethany, who is a cloud advocate at Microsoft. So looking forward to hearing from you guys your questions, and I also hope that we get to learn a thing or two from Bethany. Yes.
Bethany, if you're on the call, you could hop on and take over. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So let me. Okay, let me start. I'll share a window.
Okay. As Bethany shares her screen. Oh, hello, Bethany.
Hi.
Yes.
Wow.
I'd
You
like
can hear me,
to.
right?
Yes, we can hear you. I'd like to mention a thing or two about Bethany. Bethany is someone who's very passionate about mentorship and upskilling our young community. She has worked with various organizations such as Andela, Moringa School, and also Bethany was among the first female Africans to be selected as a gold ambassador. So yes, she's also an MLSA. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction. I hope you can see my screen.
Yes, we
Um,
can.
So I know you've done the first step. You've been able to go through Azure AI Studio. So I'll do a small overview of Azure AI Studio, and then I'll also talk a bit about creative application built using Azure AI Studio. I have tried to make my demos work today, but the demo gods were against me. So I'm not sure. Sorry. Sorry. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do a live demo, but I'll be able to share videos and I'll be able to share all the links that you need for the resources that you might require to get started. So let's get started. The first slide you're seeing is what are we building? Let me switch to my screens. Yes. So traditionally, we have LLM apps that we build, which are great for doing tasks such as being able to come up with answers to questions you ask or generate text and summarize different parts of like text contents that you have. Those were the traditional large language models that we are used to interact with. But then we have agents, which are more of autonomous doers in terms of what they do. They do it autonomously. They do it without you going in there and having them directly answer a question that you might have. In our scenario, we're building a multi-agent application, a creative application. And what we want to do is to be able to complete some tasks for us, like you will use a real assistant. So, for example, if you have an executive assistant and you want someone to help you plan your next event, your next MLSA event, you might give it a bit of details in terms of give it information on this is the event that I want, and this is the audience that I want. And with that, it can be able to come up with not only the event details, but also come up with like a summary of like the marketing details you might want, probably generate a poster for you or like images you can use in your poster, and so on and so forth. So instead of you just asking one question and getting an answer, you might ask, okay, I want to host an event on generative AI. What can I do about the event? It will give you an answer like, yeah, for the event, you need to do ABCD. But if you're using different agents which come together, it will come in and become more useful in terms of not only does it answer you the type of event you want to host, but it gives you all the assets and resources you might need. So how would we know that these are useful to different organizations? First of all, is getting the application to work with different prompts and different inputs. Then secondly, being able to debug and understand all the different failures that you might encounter. That's where tracing and debugging comes in. And then lastly, setting up and managing your infrastructure in production. So having all these things automated, having things like App Insights to give you insights on your application, and being able to now see everything coming together. You might be wondering, if you want to build such an application, where exactly do you start? Like you might know, okay, this is the application I want to build for an MLSA. I want to build a creative application that can be able to help me organize events. So you've already have an idea. So how do you go through the entire LLM application process? I don't know if you've seen this before. I'm pretty sure some of us have seen this before, how the LLM life cycle looks like. So the first one is ideating and exploring. So you try a couple of prompts, you find different LLMs and try and see if it will work based on what your idea is. And then once you've been able to figure out which prompts you want, which LLMs you want to use, you go in and start building or argumenting your application. So the first step in building is prompt engineering, where you want your application to be able to give you exactly what you want. This might be in terms of like giving examples and giving examples of like what a question will look like and a response based on that, and then also fine tuning. The next thing you might want to do is evaluation. So evaluate your prompts and see, is this what I want it to come out with? Is this something that will be okay in real life? Is it, if I go and get an answer like this, is that something I would want to show the world? So for example, one of the prompts I had yesterday was trying to generate an image of a futuristic car in traffic. And when the image was generated, traffic was moving forwards, it was moving. I think I'll share that image at the end of the call. So the traffic is moving in one direction, but the car that was generated is moving on the other direction. If I share that publicly, everyone will have opinions in terms of this is not right. If you want to see a car, it should be moving toward in the same direction traffic is moving. So you might need to evaluate your application and see if everything is working as it should. And then the other thing is exception handling. In case you get an error, how do you handle that? And lastly, RAG. RAG is retrieval augmented generation. RAG comes in when you add in your own data and try and see if it will work, and try and see, okay, these are, so for example, for our MLSA app, if you're building an MLSA app to help us with event, the data will be probably past events that you've held, data, probably information on like how you've marketed your events before, or different images and assets you've used before. And then the last bit is once you've been able to build a prototype, you want to continually monitor it when it's out in production. You want to always ensure that you can be able to monitor it, ensure it's safe to go out and can be rolled out to different users. You want to have content filtering. Content filtering is when you bring in filters such as filters around abuse. So what language do you want your application to speak? Anything that is triggering to a user, or anything that might affect a user. I'll show you how the content filtering looks like. And then you also want to deploy your application to be used in a real life scenario. And the last bit in terms of operationalizing is ensuring what you're building is cost effective. So how do you manage the different quarters? Quarters is ensuring when a user asks a question, they can be able to get an answer, and the answer will not be you've reached your quota limit, wait a bit, and then we'll wait like 30 seconds and then ask your question again. That would be a quota limit reached. And then cost management is ensuring you're within your cost. So these ideas are iterative, meaning you can start by your idea, then build, then go back, polish your idea, come back and build, operationalize, see there's something not working, go back and build, go back and ideate, and so on and so forth. You can see a different way to look at it is this table where it has different questions you might want, or different tasks that you might actually want to do. So in ideating, you might want to identify, okay, what's the business case? Which model do I want to use? And then test a prompt and see if that's what the outcome is. And then connect your data to build your flows. And then once that's done, you go to building. So how can you run your flow against data and see if it's working, and then continue iterating, continue modifying everything. And once satisfied, you can go in and now deploy your endpoint, check and see, do I have everything I need to have monitored, integrated? And then can I add this LLM into an existing application? So an example is a customer creating a great application with ASOS. So ASOS was trying to see what way should they engage different shoppers better in terms of how can they make the experiences better, how can they make their online retail a bit better than it is. That was their idea, or like the scenario. So what they did, they developed an AI application that befriends customers to be able to learn their preferences. So for example, if you someone who's into beige colors, or like you love brown, so that's probably what you're looking for in a fashion item. And then you probably want your clothes to be for the office or for school, so you keep on giving it your preferences. Probably this is you prefer trousers or you prefer dresses, and so on and so forth. And then based on the user preferences plus the trends on external data, they're able to create one's personal catalog. So you can go in and you find your own personalized catalog. And the impact it had is it was able to, within a few weeks, to successfully test and ensure that it's good in terms of it follows all the responsible AI parameters, and it's secure, and they're able to now scale in terms of if customers can be able to use it, they can be able to scale the different features, they can be able to increase the quotas, and in case one wants to use everything, they can be able to have everything sorted. So this is just an example of a scenario of an AI application. So you might be asking yourself, okay, uh, which tools do I need to be able to have this built? So the first thing is we have different CLI templates. As I said, for me today, the demo gods are not on my side. It worked yesterday, today it's not working. So I need to do the deployment again. Maybe you can do the deployment again and see if it works. But we have existing CLI templates that you can be able to make use of. And then what we'll be using is Prompty. Does anyone know what Prompty is? Or does anyone remember what Carlotta shared around Prompty? No one? Oh, interesting. So we'll be using Prompty. And then that means that I need to come back and show you what Prompty is again. And then after using Prompty, we'll use Visual Studio Code as our dev environment. You can use GitHub Codespaces and then GitHub Actions. For the frameworks, you can either use Promptflow, Semantic Kernel, or LangChain. And yeah, you can be able to use that to ease your development process. Or if you are interested in just doing life the way it is, you can just use Python and whichever framework that you want, Flask or Fast API, and use it with Prompty to be able to build your own application. Dia has mentioned he's used Prompty, so yay! Prompty is you can use it in any language. It's just an asset that helps you to be able to understand your prompts better, to be able to understand what's happening in the background, and be able to technically curate your responses. So you're just guiding your LLM to actually give you better responses. And you can have different inputs. So you can have user inputs, you can have inputs from other agents, or you can just create new inputs. This is how a Prompty asset looks like. So it's very easy to get started with. It's basically Markdown with front matter. So front matter for me is this YAML file, and then a bit of Markdown and Ginger templating. So if you're familiar with Python, or you've worked with either Django or Flask, you know what Ginger templating is. So it's this two curly brackets where you can be able to add details or different things from the inputs. So for example, we have the sample first name and last name as Jendo. So that's being added in here. And then the question Jendo asks, what is the meaning of life? That's a hard question. So you can use it with any programming language that you want. Currently, it can be able to generate it can be able to generate code for you in Python, in Promptflow, in LangChain, and in Semantic Kernel. So that's mainly Python and its framework, and in C#. So if you're a JavaScript dev, probably you can help us create our own implementation of prompt in JavaScript. And then we use Azure Dev CLI. So Azure Dev CLI helps you to create your app very easily, to be able to monitor and to be able to configure your application. So it's easy to get started with Azure CLI. Just use AZD, init, app, monitor, and you're set to go. So I don't know why my dark mode slides interacted with my light mode. So some of the slides have missing text. But this is how your Azure AZD should look like, your Azure Developer CLI should look like. Let me see if I have one that I deployed earlier. Oh, my terminal cannot go beyond. I wanted to show something that I deployed earlier, but my terminal cannot go beyond this. So I won't be able to share it with you, but you can try it and see. If we try and deploy a template, how will it look like? So this is basically what you expect to see after your deployment. You expect to see what resource group was deployed, the different resources that you're deploying. In our case, we're using Log Analytics, Azure OpenAI, Container Registry, we're using Azure Cosmos DB, and Azure AI Search. We're also having Azure Bing services, so that is also something that can be added in your Azure AZD terminal. So you use different templates, and you can be able to provision your template and have it deployed just in your terminal. So I'll share with you a video on that. So this is the application we're trying to create. So we want it to be able to write an article that markets relevant products from the online retailer, Contoso Outdoors. As I said, what you might want to do as an MLSA is probably help you market your different events for an MLSA. So what you want it to do is to be able to research any tech events that are trending online, any topics to be able to come, and you can find like relevant events to include, or like based on existing data, what do you want to include, and then it can be able to publish an article based on your event. So it just basically creates a blog for you. But in our case, we're using Contoso. So we have our online retailer that is Contoso Outdoors. We're looking for charts online around Contoso, and then we add products in our own registry to be able to now come up with an article based on our products and it actually includes outdoorsy topics. So we're just trying to market our products in a smart way. So how does this assistant work? So it's, as I said, it's an agent. So an agent is a computer program or a system that is designed to be able to perceive its environment, make decisions, and take actions to achieve like a specific set of goals or a specific set of ideas that you wanted to achieve. So for example, how you can illustrate this is if you see a girl standing in the sun. So what you might perceive is probably it might rain. And then what she does is probably I might need to open my umbrella. Can you please explain what Azure Developer CLI is? Basically, let me finish with the agent. So you might go outside. You're just standing outside in the sun, and then you might perceive that it might rain, or you can see the dark clouds coming up, and you see that this is a potential of rain. So what you decide to do is open an umbrella to be able to ensure you stay dry and probably your hair is not rained on. So that's an example of how agents work. So they can be able to see, okay, this is what the user has based on the programs that are existing. It can decide, okay, let me call this function based on what the user asked and return these results that I have. So what Azure AZD is, it's basically, this is my local terminal. So what I'm trying to do is provision resources. So to provision resources, I'm using Azure CLI. So you can see this is Azure Cloud Shell. So I'm either using Azure, the Bash or the PowerShell. So I'll choose Bash. And what AZD does, AZD is just the Azure developer templating that can enable you to be able to deploy your resources. So if, for example, I want to log into my account, I can actually, let me switch to PowerShell. Let me go back here. So what you can be able to use with Azure AZD is, it's, as I said, you can be able to use this to do anything you want on your terminal. Instead of going out there and provisioning everything on Azure, it helps you provision everything in your local environment. So what you can be able to do is, first you need to log into Azure. So you use Azure Auth to be able to log into Azure. If you have an already existing template, you can use Azure Init to be able to initialize your application and then use that template to be able to get started with it. Once you've been able to have your application set up, what you might want to do is to deploy, right? So you might go in there and deploy your application. And then what other things you can be able to do is, for example, delete resources. You can be able to provision resources in Azure using apps. So AZD app helps you to provision any resources that you might want. And then this provision is specifically for an application. And then once you're done deploying your resources, you can come in here, use Monitor to be able to monitor your application, to be able to manage your pipelines and so on. And then version, of course, to help you see what version it is. So if you use PowerShell, for example, I don't know if it works. Yes, if you use PowerShell, it can be able to give you like ideas of what you want to do. So you can't log in with AZD. So what you might want to do is Azure Authenticate and then log in. So it gives you like auto completion to be able to do everything you want to do. So what you might want to do is probably be able to have your application running. So the next question is, what LLMs can Azure work with in the moment to create an agentic application? Let me answer in a few. So for this LLM, what we want to do is to find references in other text. For example, you provided where you've provided information, it can be able to go in and find references there. It can be able to collect data from a database, and it can be able to ensure that you can be able to evaluate and see this is actually quality work that you're producing. So why I wanted to answer your question in a few is we have this, what is it called? We have this, why am I forgetting the name of this? Diagrammatic flow of the application, of how the application works. So how the application works is a user inputs their question, goes through Azure Managed Identity, and you're using Azure Application Container and Azure Monitoring to be able to monitor and evaluate everything that you're doing. In Azure AI Studio, where our focus is, we have these Azure OpenAI services. So it does not matter whether you're building, for example, a writer agent or you're building an editor agent. The main thing you should look at is, for these tasks, which is the best LLM. So if you're doing research, probably the best LLM might be GPT 3.5 Turbo. So the other thing might be, what do you want your LLM to support? So for example, if you want your LLM to support multimodal inputs, you might want to use GPT-4o. Or if you want your LLM to generate images, you might want to use DALI to be able to generate images. So let me show you in the code. So this is our agents. So this has more agents, just not just the editor and the researcher, the writer, and then we have the product. So the first agent, let me go to the researcher. So this is our prompting. And our researcher prompt is using GPT 3.5 Turbo. And this is the context the researcher is given. So this agent is designed to help the writer by formulating expert queries and provisioning the writer with the information they need. So they have two instructions. The first instruction is, can you find the latest camping trends and what folks are doing in the winter? and then can you dig up some information about the latest camping trends? And then once it's been able to do that, so they can use this feedback. So the feedback is, can you dig information? So these are the codes that they can use, and then they can be able to dig information. And what they're using is this function. So this is one of the inputs they have. Is it an input? One of the parameters they have is this function. So this function is enabling them to actually search the different queries, and it will return data in this format. And then you can see, oh wow, you can see what I'm doing. Oh, I think I made a mistake. So I can't share. Oh, I'm supposed to share a screen, not a window. I'm sorry. Can you see my screen? Can you see the code? I thought I shared a window. Oh, I'm so sorry. So you actually never even saw what I was doing in Azure AZD. I'm sorry. I shared a specific window instead of sharing the screen. So let me start with Azure AZD. So in the terminal, in my terminal, I hope everyone has been able to interact with the terminal before. So in my terminal, I have, let me close this one. In my terminal, I have all these different terminals that I can use. So I have installed Azure CLI. This is the Azure Cloud. This is the Azure Cloud Shell. I have installed it locally. So I have the bash, and as well I have the PowerShell. So when you're using, the first thing I did, it will preposition because it signs in with my account. So I already, oh, I'm not supposed to show that out loud, but I've already added my accounts in my Git VS Code settings. So you can be able to see my accounts have been added. So what I wanted to show was, if you click AZD help, it will show you the different commands. So first it tells you this is Azure Developer CLI, and it helps onboard and manage your applications on Azure. So the main command is AZD, and then you add all these other ones. So the first one is, if you want to configure your app, what you might want to do is probably authenticate, log into your Azure account, do the different configurations. So which subscription do you want to use? Which location do you want to use? And then initialize an application, and then be able to check the template that you want to use and use it. And then the second thing is, you want to deploy your resources on Azure. So you can use deploy, but then you can also use AZD app. This is a single command that will provision all the resources that you might need in a single project. And then once you're done deploying, you also have environments. I think this is important to be able to manage your environments, and then down to delete all the resources you've provisions for a specific application. And then once your application is up, you want to be able to monitor, test, and be able to see your application in production. And then, of course, if you want any information, you can use version to check which version you're using. And then I've used help to be able to just get insights on what AZD is doing. Is it running on an Azure server or local? It will be confusing if I say this, but it's running locally, but it's on, everything I'm doing is running locally. So if I go to Azure portal, let's get this browser here. If I go to portal.azure.com, what you might see, what happens if you want to do this on the cloud. So that's running, this is running locally on my VS Code, right? This is on my Visual Studio Code, literally. So if I want to do the same in Azure portal, what I'll do, I don't know why it's opening that. What I'll do is I'll come up here and click on that code button, and I'll be able to have the same in Azure portal. So if you want to run it on the cloud, you can run it here. If you want to run it locally, you can have it on VS Code. So what you might need is have the Azure CLI installed. That's the main thing that you want to be able to install, Azure CLI. Okay, and then I mentioned when you're using the PowerShell version, it can be able to auto complete for you. So we have AZ command. This is Azure command, and then we have, so for example, this is an Azure command. So Azure login, and then I want to log in, like for example, using my device code. So using device code, I can do that. But then I can also log in with AZD. So I'll do AZD and then log in with my account. So those are the only things I mentioned there. And then, yeah. So the other question was around what LLMs can Azure work with in the moment if you're creating an agentic application. So I was doing a showcase of this application of ours. Let me remove its size. So we have our agents here. So the agents we have is editor, product, researcher, and writer. So the first agent that we have is the researcher prompting. So what I was saying is this is using GPT 3.5 Turbo, and the parameters it's using is functions to be able to give us the response that we want. And then we have the sample input. So for example, the instructions is we're asking the researcher to find the latest camping trends and what folks are doing in winter. And then for feedback, we want it to be able to dig information around specifically the latest camping trends and what folks are doing in winter. So you have our researcher agent. This is the task they're doing. And then this is the feedback they get. And then these are the codes they're using to be able to bring us the feedback. And that's about it. So as a user, the user can be able to, you'll see with the application, the final bit of the application, the user can be able to add in instructions and be able to say, oh, as a researcher, I should do A, B, C, D. And then we have our product prompting, still using GPT 3.5 Turbo. I've shown researcher. We have our writer. Our writer is using GPT-4. I normally switch to GPT-4 because it has more creative in terms of the output, but then you can be able to switch to whichever deployment that you want and get your response based on that. And then from here you can be able to see it's using results from the previous it's using inputs from the previous research that we got. So for example, this is the research we got from product. This is details we got from research. Then it's using that to be able to bring us the output of everything. Yeah. And then the evaluator is now coming in to be able to see, the editor is coming in to be able to evaluate and see, okay, probably this you did this, but I don't think, yeah, your rating should be, yeah, to be able to now give feedback to our previous agents. Yeah, I hope I've answered those two questions. Yeah. So this is the idea of how the application looks like. You can be able to build any application that you want. You can be able to build as many agents as you want. So you can be able to include, if you want like a designer, you want to include images, you can be able to include all that in your application. Okay, so building the application. So I'll share the links to all this. But our application, when you do AZD app, can I do it again? These are the resources that should be provisioned. So let me see if I have all those resources. Resource group. This is my resource group, the creative writer, and these are the resources that are provisioned. So once you are able to if you follow the instructions in the application and you can be able to deploy the application, this is the results that you'll get. So yeah, and then this is how ideally the app should work. So you give it context, you give it instruction, and then you get it to work. So this app has gone through different variations. This was a variation, I think, for 1 month ago. So it also includes the creative team as well as the documentation. So you can be able to see what each person is doing, what each agent is doing, and you can be able to see them working in par with each other to be able to give a response in all that. So we have, as I mentioned, we have the researcher, we have the writer, we have the editor. The editor is coming in to give feedback on everything. And then once the feedback is incorporated, it now goes into a document, and you can be able to see the final output of this is the article, this is how the article looks like. And you can be able to use it in your own way, in your own application. So let me share the link to this repository before I continue further. Let me share the link to the repository. OpenAI. So that you can be able to explain actions of how you run it. It has instructions of how you can be able to use the different applications. Yep. This is the application. So the current version is an updated version of the previous one. So now, instead of you opening all the different pages, it's just one page, and you can be able to see it in action as it's producing the different languages and everything. So in this README, you'll be able to see also the instructions of getting started. As I've mentioned, we're using AZD. So there are two options in this. If you come in and run, oh no, I'm not connecting to Spotify. So there are two options. You can use GitHub Codespaces. I am on my personal laptop, so unfortunately I can't use GitHub Codespaces in this laptop, but you can be able to click directly open in GitHub Codespaces and run the application. So you can use AZD auth to log into Azure, the AZD CLI, the Azure Developer CLI, and then AZ to log in specifically to Azure CLI, and then use AZD app to provision the resources. And once your resources are provisioned, you can come back and do the deployment down here. So you navigate to your application, and then we're using Fast API. So use Fast API to run the main Python file, and then we're also serving it to React applications. So now, once you've been able to have your API running, you install your use npm install to install your packages, npm run dev to run your application. And then once you're done, you can be able to see the application in action. For debugging, this has instruction in case you need to debug anything. And then I'll go ahead and talk more about tracing and evaluating and everything else. But I just wanted to give you an overview of how to get started. If you're using your local environment, so this is purely on Codespaces, you can use dev containers. So you can use, if you have Docker installed in your application, you can, in your laptop, you can be able to use Docker as well. But then the other option, which is the one I was trying to debug, is using your local environment. So you can first, if you're using your local environment, or we can try this again and see if it will work. But it will take a lot of time, so we won't dwell a lot on it. So first, since I already have the resources deployed, the first step probably will be AZD down, and then purge everything. And then once everything is purged, I'll go ahead and repeat the steps, and we can see how we can be able to deploy application. It will take a while. So let me, 16, are you sure? Yes. yeah, deleting your resources may take a while, so it will delete, and then I'll come back again and you can provision and see if it will be able to run before we end the call. And then what else? So once you've been able to, so the first thing, if you're using it locally, you first need to initialize your project. Once your project is initialized, you now do the deployment. So you use AZD to log in. Again, you will need Azure CLI installed to be able to do this. And then log into your Azure Developer CLI, log into Azure, then finally log in, provision the resources. Once it's done, now we go to the deployment steps. Okay, so let's wait for the resources to delete. Once they're deleted, let me shift this to a different screen so you can be able to see once the resources are deleted. I'll go through the steps again and you can be able to see the final result. Okay, so once you've deployed your resource group, as I said, this is how the resource group will look like. This is what you expect to see. So the first thing you might want to do is add in tracing. So tracing enables you to see how your application is working in terms of how are you able to see what tokens have been used, how are you able to see what are the different time it has taken to be able to gather different responses. So you can add in tracing. So I'll give it a second for the video to proceed. And we're using PromFlow in this case. So what you want to do is first have the modules that you want installed. So we'll install our API agents and the orchestrator to be able to now have it be able to trace everything that you might want to do. So once we have this installed, you can see we're using @trace everywhere. Oh, sorry, I've gone back. You can see we're using @trace everywhere. So once you have this installed, yes, I've gone back a slide. And let me come back again. You can see we're using @trace everywhere. So once you have that installed, you can be able to add in your start trace and everything, and you'll be able to see it in action. This is the view that you expect to see. So you can be able to see how long each process took, what were the inputs, what was the output, and then you can be able to see it up to the OpenAI level. So you can first see like how long did the OpenAI chat take to be able to do everything that it was doing, what were the tokens used, that's 742 tokens, it took 3 seconds, and then the function, each function there, and then you can also see promptly how long it took to execute, and then also the initial function that we're tracing. You can be able to see how long it each took to be able to come up with a response. So that's the use of tracing, to be able to just see, have more visibility on what's happening in your code. Once you set up tracing, you can also go in and add in a way to be able to, I want to go to the last video. I think it's this one. I want to go to this video to show you exactly what you expect when you have added tracing. So this is an example. For example, in the LLM, you can be able to see the arguments that were there, what was how the conversation was. You can be able to see it even in action in terms of, instead of seeing it in JSON, can you be able to actually see the real conversations? This is what was there in the prompt. And then you can also see the different tools that were used. So what we were using was functions. As I previously showed, we were using functions to be able to come in and get the responses from the web, find the trending topics. So it was able to find news, it was able to go in and get all the different details that we wanted. And then in case you get any errors, it can also come in and show you, oh, these were the errors you encountered, and so on and so forth. So that's a bit about being able to come in and see what is happening behind the scenes and be able to get a view of your code, not just a view of the tokens and the time, but being able to also debug and see what challenges you faced. So the last bit was how we can be able to implement this in real life. So I was to share with you, I was to come in and share with you the application in action. So I'm still deleting resources. So once the resources are deleted, we'll come back and you can even start with instructions and see how you can be able to see if you can be able to continue and have it in action. But before I continue with this code, I'll want to show, this is the implementation. If you want to implement this in code, in your VS Code, this is how you implement it. I'm hoping I have all the resources deleted before the session ends. But then I also wanted to show you, if you're using Azure AI Studio, where everything is and how you can also get started. So I'll just choose a random project. So this is, I'll choose this hub because it has an existing project. And I'll show you how you can be able to do all this. I'll show you how you can be able to do all this in terms of, now if you want to do all this in Azure AI Studio. I'm looking at the chat and there's someone who's in the lobby. I'm not sure what's the problem, but I see DJ is saying you can ask her to join through incognito. Yeah, you can. I'm joining in my personal laptop in incognito, so you can just share the link with her and have the person join in incognito. Let me share the call link, the one that I used to join this call. Probably they're joining in the wrong. Since I'm not using my work laptop, I'm also, yeah, I'm not in incognito. It worked without me going incognito, but you can use that link and try joining or change browsers. I'm using Brave. You can use Edge. It's much better. In case you face these challenges, it's much easier to debug, but incognito will always work. Anyway, back to AI Studio. So I wanted to show, this is, I think, the last bit of my presentation before we go back and try provision our resources and see how it works. So I wanted to show you how you can do all this instead of doing it in your VS Code, how you can do it in Azure AI Studio. And you can see everything is sectioned into different, categories. So the first thing is our models. As I said, step one is to be able to see which model exactly do you want to use, what is your use case that you want to use. So there are different models that you can pick from. Most of the time you find yourself working with base models such as GPT-4, GPT-4o, and I think the latest one is OI, which was announced, I think, 2 days ago, or was it yesterday? Not sure. But you can use any depending on your use case. So of course, DALI is for images, GPT-4 mainly for text generation, GPT-4o mainly for multimodality, as well as GPT-4, which also supports multimodality. I'm not saying, oh yeah, GPT-4, and then Whisper for text, as well as text to speech, all these are for text. Then for embeddings, we have DaVinci and text embedding, and then DALI, as I mentioned, for images. And then we have all these other models that you might want to use, not necessarily OpenAI. So if you want to like use a small model, the small language models, you can use Phi. If you want to fine tune your models, you want to provision your models differently, you can use any of those that are available in the model catalog. And then we also have the prompt catalog. This ideally helps you ideate and see. So the one that I like, I hope it's still here. It's one by Shakespeare. Let me search if it's here. Shakespeare. Yes. I don't know how to spell Shakespeare. Yeah, the Shakespearean writing assistant. So it's just a basic, assistant that you can be able to create. And what you just want to do is to write your entire sentences in Shakespearean language. So, for example, if you want to turn down an invitation to dinner, it may say, "Dearest, regretfully, I must decline thy invitation. Prior engagements call me hence, apologies." So you can test this, for example, in chat and see how accurate it's working. So you might use this, for example, if you want to market your event in a specific style. So probably you want to market your event in a Shakespearean style. So what I want to do is invite students to uh, uh, which event? A GitHub event. An introduction to GitHub event. An introduction to introduction to GitHub event. So the idea here is you've given the model instructions, you've given the models examples to be able to use the same way you do in Prompty. You can actually have this in Prompty, and you can be able to see you've done invite students to an introduction event, and it's hacky, hear ye students of this fine institution. An introduction to GitHub event is nigh. Where forth or though, you may ask. This is in the Great Hall, and so on and so forth. And once you've been able to see your deployment, you can add in data. I won't try because it takes a long time to add in data. You can track the parameters of your application. I want it to be as creative as possible. So you might have the temperature and the top P, very creative. If you want to implement this in code, of course, you have that option, but you can essentially just export it to a prompt flow. So just have it in a flow and have your application ready to go, right? And then once your application is created, the other thing you might want to do is probably deploy in production. So ideally, you can do everything you want to do directly on Azure AI Studio. The only thing you might want to do is just tweak the different parameters to be able to tell you can do A, B, C, D, and not the other. I'm still looking at my resource group to see if it's deleted, so not yet. So it will take a minute to create the flow. Let me go back to AI Studio, ai.azure.com. So the first thing we've been able to do is probably create a flow. And once you create this flow, you can go in and add more tweaks to it, add more adjustments to it. And then the other thing you can be able to do is, let's go back to our sample, right? This is still creating. Let me duplicate this tab for future use case. So it will take a minute to load. And what I'll want to do is probably deploy. What you'll want to do is probably have this Shakespearean version of our application deployed. So I'll go to prompt samples where Shakespeare is somewhere here. Use the prompt and then deploy it directly as a web app. So once you deploy it directly as a web app, this means you will need to add in your name, your subscription. I'm not sure if everyone here is a student ambassador. If you are, everyone has a Visual Studio Enterprise subscription. So you can be able to use that location. You can use this TOS pricing. You can use the free plan. It's just a demo web app, and you can name your application. So it can be Shakespeare event app, and you can just deploy. It will take a while to deploy, so that's why I've created another iteration of this. So as this to deploy, it normally takes a long time to deploy. So the idea is when you're deploying something, or for example, if you're using Azure, if you're using Android Studio and you're building your application, the idea is to normally go out, bake a cake, and then when you come back, everything will be done. So same thing here. The idea is to just give it some time and then come back once it's deployed. So that's the second one, deploying your web app takes a few seconds. You can find it in your deployments tab. So the other thing you might want to do is evaluate. So we can't evaluate first of all because we need our application to be in production for an evaluation. And then these other playgrounds, you can be able to check them out, see what they do. But then the other thing I wanted to talk about is you can work directly on VS Code while you're in AI Studio. So you don't need to start from VS Code. You can start from AI Studio, then go to VS Code. And then the other thing is tracing. So I've shown you a sample trace. Wow, this flow is taking long. Once the flow is built, I'll show you a sample trace to be able to see. I can create a new trace without an already existing application. So I'll demonstrate with you a trace that you can be able to do. So you can add in, create a new trace and add the existing flow that you created to be able to see it in action. And then lastly, we have evaluation and fine tuning. So evaluation is you can either do a manual evaluation or you can have your evaluation done with an already existing model. So you can have it done with a GPT 3.5 or GPT-4 model to do your evaluation. So this is how you would want your evaluation to come back as. So for example, you have the relevance. So if it was an article about the latest camping trends, what was the outcome of the evaluation? So probably it was able, you can see the relevance. When it's writing about camping trends and hiking shoes, the relevance is high. Relevance basically means how closely related is it to the question that it was asked. So you can see the one around the best kind of tents for snow camping. The relevance was very low. Maybe because not a lot of people go snow camping, I'm not sure. And then fluency is the grammar, how grammatically correct is it? Coherence is the flow, and groundedness is if you provided data with it. So how does it use the data provided to respond to the question asked? So that's around groundedness. So once you do your evaluation, that's the outcome that you would want to get. And then fine tuning is in case you want to fine tune an existing model. And then I've talked about the different tools. This last bit is around now like the different artifacts that you've added. So if you add in your own data, it will come here. If you add in Azure AI search, an index will probably be generated here. Deployments. So let's see if our application was deployed. Oh, so this is the different model deployments that we have. This is the app deployments. So our application, yes, our application is running and deployed. And then service deployment. What other services do we have that we want to deploy? These are the different Azure AI services. So I think previously you might have heard about Azure cognitive services, so like cognitive service for vision, document intelligence was around the documents, and so on and so forth. And then the last bit is around content filters. I think I talked about this in the introduction. So a content filter would basically help you be able to come up with a way to filter the output of either the inputs or the outputs of your model. So if you're filtering the inputs, it might be you're filtering things like the content itself. So like violence, does the content have violence, hate, and then you also want it to shield jailbreak. Jailbreak is when someone tries to come in and break the application. So for example, you want to know secret details about a specific company. So you might ask for like passwords, you might ask for the application to do something that it's not supposed to do. So for example, you might want it to give you advice on like stock to buy, but essentially it does not come into it cannot come in and tell you buy this, buy this. So I can add this content filters, and then block list is if you have a list of things that you want to be blocked. So if it's a children's application you're building, what are things you want to block? And then these are the inputs. So this is what the user brings in. And then the outputs is now what the LLM gives out. So for the output from the LLM, you might want to block any output that is already existing, in terms of you don't want to be able to, you don't want to copy someone else's code, or you don't want to be able to go into a copyright fight because the LLM was not able to do. So this is annotated block. For code, we just want it to annotate only, because ideally you're not supposed to be able to copy paste the code that's provided. And then once you're done, you can select which deployments you want it to block for. So I can select GPT-4o, review, and then create my filter. Let me see. Okay, so this is our Shakespeare app. So we wanted, this is a simple application you can actually share. I'm not sure if you will be able to, use it. You can test and see. So you can be able to see, the idea I was bringing in was for an event. So if you want to ask a question about an event, you want to create text about an event. So the event will be I did a GitHub event. So I want an introduction, thank you note to students who attended my session on introduction to Azure. So let's see. So it's supposed to generate, yes, a Shakespearean message about this. Oh, methinks it behooves me to extend gratitude for thee for attending my session. So I know a lot of people have like Star Wars themed probably events or something of that sort. So that can be an idea you might want to incorporate in your application. So let's see if we were able to get our flow up and running. Not yet. Flow is still being created. Okay, so we might not be able to do tracing today. Yeah, because we need an existing flow to be able to do the tracing. But once a flow is created, you can just come in and add your trace. So let's give it a second. Let me see if I've been able to. Oh, this is how tracing should look like, as I've shown. So it gives you conversation, it gives you detailed information of everything you're doing. I want to check. It's not been able to delete, could not delete account since it contains. Oh, so there's an issue with AI services. So when you're deleting, yeah, I know it might be inaccessible. That means you need to, you can go ahead and create on your own. Yeah, so this will take a longer time than I anticipated, because I need to delete each and every deployment that I have in a specific resource. Then I can come back and have everything else deleted. There's a question that I skipped. Does it have some evaluation for image or video generative AI prompts too? I'm yet to see one specifically for those services, so I can't confirm yes or no. Maybe if I check on it. What is the evaluation range you should be expecting for a model to be considered usable? In machine learning and AI, when you're trying to evaluate something specific, it mainly depends with the level of impact. Let me give you an example. So you have a medical, when we're building ML applications, we had the two main applications that we used to build, not application models. When you're building ML models, the first examples you'll have will be the example of an iris, whether a flower is, I don't know, iris setosa, something. And then the other example we used to have was breast cancer, whether a tumor is malignant or it's the other one, it's either malignant or it's dangerous. I'm not sure. So these are two different case scenarios. One, you're trying to just identify, is this the right flower, is this not? For that, an accuracy of 80 or like 90 will be okay. It doesn't, even 70 will be okay, because it's just trying to identify different flowers. And probably your data set is not as huge. But then if you're, yeah, benign. So you're trying to check if a tumor is benign or the tumor is malignant. For that, the accuracy must be as high as possible, something like 98 or like 96. So it depends on the use case. If you're creating just your own application to be able to, let me go back to this. If you're creating your own application to be able to just come up with articles that a user will review at the end, having 4 and above for everything will be ideal. So you might want to change, to look at your relevance and see, can I change my relevance to 4 higher? Probably check on like, why is the relevance for an article around the best kind of tents for snow camping very low. So you might want to check on that and evaluate. And then the higher the impact, the higher your relevance, your metrics should be, your evaluation metrics should be. And then the other thing is around groundedness. So I think that is the most, especially if you're using your own data, that is the first thing you should be able to check on, in terms of, does it actually use the data you've provided? Because if the LLM just goes on and writes things out of thin air, you might want to question it. An example I think I've had is when an LLM, they were building agents, and the agent was supposed to come in and be able to book flights for people. So it booked a flight, a very non-existent flight, and it charged someone's account for that non-existent flight. So you can imagine, as a user, you're in I don't know which is Heathrow. Heathrow is one of the biggest airports in the world. So in Heathrow, and you're trying to find, Heathrow is in London, and you're going for your flight at 1 a.m. that you booked via LLM, and you just going there to be able to board your flight, and you're showing the flight attendant that this is the ticket I have, this is the flight I'm getting. But in the ground, in real life, the flight does not exist. So those are scenarios that you should be thinking about. So if your evaluation results, for example, if your groundedness is 4, that one, in our case, we're measuring it out of 5. That 1 out of 5 might be that person who got a wrongly booked plane because the groundedness was not as good as it should have been. So that's where I think the black box with AI application is that you can't be 100% accurate, because you're just, these are models. These are things that are predicting something that might occur. These are things that are predicting things that might happen. So you might not get to 100%, but if you're as close as possible to 100, the better. I think that's it around evaluation. So I unfortunately cannot show this because I need to delete these deployments, but the steps for the implementation of this is, you can either find it in the README, everything you would want about this application, you can find it in the README and deploy, test it out, see how the different agents work together. You can use GitHub Codespaces. As I said, I'm not on my work laptop, so I cannot use GitHub Codespaces. But GitHub Codespaces works, or you can use your dev container to be able to provision this. And then if you want more information, you can read it in the docs. So anything you might want to, like, any more information you might want to know about, anything you might want to be able to get an idea about everything will be in the docs. Yeah, and then let me see if my flow actually finished. I'm having my fingers crossed. Still not yet. I can't create another one because yeah, it will take a long time. But ideally, once I think I'll share it with I'll share the final video of the flow once it's done, and then we can be able to see how tracing and evaluation works. I'll just share a link to already existing materials on that. And that's about it for my session. Or you can also, for monitoring, you can, once your application is in production, you can use App Insights to be able to monitor your application. So let me go back to this. Deployments, we're looking at app deployments. Let me see if it will give me insights. But ideally, you should be able to get insights on your application, like who's using your application, how has it been used, how many tokens have been used, and so on and so forth, to be able to just get an idea of how your application is working. Monitoring, application insights. Yeah, it's not turned on. So once turned on, I can now go in and see who has been using this application, how has it been used, and yeah, you can be able to do all that. The problem with this deployment is it's mainly tied to an organization. So that's why once I've deployed it, it can only be used with people in my own organization. So even if I share it, it might not be used. Anyone outside the organization may not be able to use it. But then if you're using VS Code, you can deploy it in your own environment, and anyone can be able to use it. And that's it. I've talked about Prompty, how you can create your own Prompty. I haven't talked about how you can create your own Prompty because that's something Carlotta covered last week. I mean, 2 days ago. But I've talked about how a Prompty file looks like. And then I've showed you a bit around tracing and a bit around Azure AZD. And that's it. So you can get that. I've already shared the link. Let me share it again. I've shared the link to the sample, so you can get that sample and get started with it. Prompty, anything around Prompty, you can check on Prompty AI. Anything around Azure AI Studio, you can check on ai.azure.com. And that's it about this session. Unless there's any other question, I can pass it back to Dia. I think it's Dia. Yeah.
So it's very great to hear from you, Eleonora.
Yes. Thank you, Bethany. We really enjoyed your session. Yes. Anyone in the chat section? Anyone who has a question? Maybe you'd like to ask Bethany, can raise your hand. Okay. If there are no more questions, I think that is it for our session. As we always do, we'd like to request everyone to turn on their cameras so that you can take a group photo. Yes. So if you can, kindly turn on your camera so that you take a group photo.
My camera is too zoomed in. Let me.
Yes.
That works.
Okay. I'm taking the first one. Now we can do a crazy or a silly pose for the second one. Wow, nice. The last one. Yes, so I think that's great. So I think that is all for today. Thank you so much, Bethany. We appreciate you being a speaker for the bootcamp, and thank you everyone who was able to attend. I hope you've gained a thing or two, and please do share on your LinkedIn, tag Bethany, tag us, the WGMIT leads, Dia, Olivia, Valentina, and I on the LinkedIn. Yes. So I think you can leave at your own pleasure.
Thanks and bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much for the amazing session.